Hi guys, JP from FSI Panel. Welcome on that video where I will show you how easily you can fly quick approaches using the fly-by-wire A320 or the Headwinds A330 with FSI Panel 2020. For MSFS, we are going to fly a short final. Within 1 or 2 minutes, we should be in the air. And then we will fly right-hand vectors for ILS 24 right in Los Angeles using the Headwinds A330. I will show you how to quickly program the approach and how easy it can be done with FSI Panel. So before I forget, please subscribe to the channel. That will help me doing more and more video for you. Thank you guys. Let's go ahead and start our video. All right, here we are in a simulator. So the first thing to do is to select your aircraft. So we said for the first part, we want to try the fly-by-wire A320. So I will take here the fly-by-wire A320 and I will choose a nice livery for that flight. Next, the airport where you want to train. So let's enter Los Angeles and then the runway. So we will try runway 24 right, so we have a chance to overfly the In-N-Out Burger on short final. And the weather, I'm going to use live weather, that's fine. And the day, right now it's too early in the morning. We should be in bed. So let's go for something like 9 o'clock. This is up to you what you want to set. And once this is done, you just click fly and we see each other when the aircraft is on the runway. Here we are, our aircraft is ready and it has been loaded in Los Angeles 24 right. I just click ready to fly and here we are in the cockpit. A new version of the fly-by-wire. Good to know, I will update it later on. All right, nothing to be done here, just one thing to make sure though. Make sure your engines are running. This aircraft has 2 beautiful engines and they need to be turning when you want to use FSI Panel. So make sure your engines are running. That's the only thing you need to do. You don't need to worry about your FCU. You don't need to worry about your MCDU. It can stay as it is by default. Now you can see that the aircraft weight is 46 tons and we have about 4 tons of fuel. I'm flying in metric. If you have Imperial, you're going to have different value. This is the default value when you load the aircraft. If you want to change your training weight, then go ahead and use the tablet. So I'll show you that right now. It's as well very important to do landings at different weight. The aircraft doesn't handle the same way. So to do that, on the fly-by-wire, you just go to the fuel. And as the engines are running, the refuel time is instant. And then you can choose your fuel. So let's say we are going to take a little bit less fuel, like 7 tons. You click right there, the fuel is done. And now the payload, we are going to select or payload if you don't want to fly with the actual weight. So I will use 150 passengers and we will use, I don't know, a cargo of 3 tons, that's fine. So now that will give me the new zero fuel weight of 58.1 instead of 42.5 right now. And I click right there and the boarding is completed. My aircraft is in the envelope. I have done everything I need to fly with FSI Panel. Another thing just to point out is if you have some hardware like the Thrustmaster, make sure that your engine selectors are on and that you match what FSI Panel is doing. So right now we have a flaps 1 here and my Thrustmaster is not in the same position. That doesn't really matter, but later on it will be important to match what FSI Panel is doing.
Ladies and gentlemen,
all right, we are ready. Let's program the approach in FSI Panel. All right, here we are in FSI Panel, just started the software, and the first thing you need to check before you do anything, make sure you are at the right place. So right now you can see that FSI Panel has detected Los Angeles as my airport, that's correct. And we are sitting on runway 24 right, that's as well correct. One last thing, make sure you check that the correct aircraft has been detected. So we are sitting on a fly-by-wire A320 Neo, that's correct. Now we could basically program our approach. Before doing that, let me show you what are the options for these 2 aircraft. So if you go to Setup, and on the top you go to the Fly-by-Wire tab, you can see here a couple of options for the 320 and for the Headwind A330. Those options are, for example, Program FMC. So that should be in fact MCDU and will be changed very shortly, but this is if you want FSI Panel to program your ILS approach in your MCDU. If you want FSI Panel to set the correct weight for you, if you want FSI Panel to set your QNH, altimeter setting, wind, and temperature in the performance page. That's very handy, so I will suggest you to make sure you have it ticked. Then the next one is the default auto brake, where you can choose off, low, medium, max. This is the default auto brake that FSI panel will set anytime it positions the aircraft for you. So you will have time to change it later on in the trimming phase if you want to change that later on, so don't bother to change it all the time if you want a different auto brake. Same thing for the flaps. This is the default flaps that FSI panel will set in the MCDU, and as well the default flaps that FSI panel will set when you select a final position. So either flaps 3 or flaps full on the Airbus. I will select flaps full in my case, as I do all of my landing with flaps full, most of the landings I will say. Now, if, for example, today I would like to do a flaps 3 landing, I will not need to come here and modify it in the default page. We can do that from the front page. I will show you that on the very first approach we fly together. The next two things we can change right there is the after landing flow. So if, like me, you start looking up and down to change your lights and switch off your transponder, and then when you look again up, you are on the grass, then I suggest you use, like I do, the after landing flow. That's very convenient. You land the aircraft, you vacate the runway, and then you start the after landing flow by retracting. Your speed brake and FSI panel will do all the actions as per the FCOM that are required for the after landing flow, even starting your APU. So you can just concentrate on taxiing your airplane to the gate. And the final one is the set manage speed on final. So if you want FSI panel to set your speed to manage mode before giving you the control. So for me, I always have all these options ticked, as you can see right now on the screen. All right, let's go back into the position window. And here, a couple of things I want to mention. Those are the quick action button. So very convenient. If you want to do a quick approach, you just choose your position wherever you want to be positioned. Of course, FSI panel can go much farther into the positioning, but that will be the case in another video where I will show you all the options. But here, we are just going to use the quick setup button. So we want to fly today a short funnel in Los Angeles on runway 24 right. So I've selected it here on the quick buttons. Then you can see on the top right of your screen the summary of the approach. So we should be positioned for an ILS runway 24 right. We should be at 4 nautical miles and the altitude should be 1,100 feet. So that's a summary. Now, if you go to the left side, you have two more options that you can choose. The first one here is the profile or configuration if you prefer. Right now, as I've selected a final position, FSI panel says final. If I would select vectors, then it will say vectors. If I select downwind, then it will be clean. So clean basically is gear up, flaps up. Vectors is flaps 1, gear up. And final is gear down, flaps as per the default landing flaps. So if, for example, you fly a 20 miles final and you would like the aircraft to be positioned with clean, you will select clean here. And now I'm on final, but my aircraft will be positioned gear up, flaps up. And it will be my responsibility to configure the aircraft for landing. If you prefer vectors position, same thing, then the aircraft will be positioned with flaps 1, gear up, and it will be your responsibility to configure the aircraft for landing. But the default is final, so we have the aircraft on final in a final configuration, so then everything is ready for us just to do the landing. Then next options there is the flaps setting for landing, and this is not, it's using here the default, which is flaps full right now for me. If I click on it, now I say I tell FSI panel for the next approach, I want to do a flaps 3. I don't need to go and change my default landing flap. I just change it right there. Those two buttons I just show you is completely optional. Basically, if you want to use FSI panel quickly, you just click where you want to go, move aircraft. That's the only thing that you need to do. All right, so let's go back into the simulator. We'll click move aircraft and we will see what happened in the fly-by-wire A320. So let's click move aircraft and move in the simulator. Here we are in the aircraft. So the first thing you will see is FSI panel will set your cockpit. Only a few things, basically. It will just set in the MCDU Los Angeles to Los Angeles and the correct flaps. So for us, flaps 3, as we decided to land with flaps 3. Once this is done, then as you can see now on the screen, FSI panel is asking you to set the thrust levers to climb detent. Alright, so what I will do now, one extra step, and this is because I have a thrust master, I will make sure that my flaps handle match whatever FSI panel has set for me. So I just do that as an extra step as I have a thrust master. Alright, now what I will need to do, set my thrust levers to climb detent, and then FSI panel will start programming the aircraft for us. So let's go ahead and move the thrust lever to climb. Once this is done, you will see FSI panel is telling you preparing your approach. So now the aircraft is static and the speed will start to increase. You can see that on your PFD. Our speed will increase, and this is completely normal. FSI panel is doing this to make sure all the systems are initialized correctly on the fly-by-wire. So we are simulating a takeoff roll here, and you should not do anything. Passing 130 knots, we will be spawn in the air. So let's see that happening right now. 130 knots. Here we are, we have Los Angeles in front of us, and now FSI panel is doing everything, so do not touch anything. That's very important. Just watch the magic. You can see now the FCU set, heading vertical speed. The auto throttle is engaged, the auto thrust is engaged in speed mode, and now FSI panel will program the MCDU. So you can see that in real time now, FSI 001. Then we will have the cost index, the cruising altitude, the weight. The approach now will be set on the ILS 24 right, so we have a correct ILS indication. And finally, it will set the weather information on the performance page. So we should have QNH, we should have the temperature, and we will have the wind. Now that this is done, we have a conf 3. So we have auto brake low set by FSI panel. If I look up here, FSI panel has set landing flap 3. All the lights are set. Everything is done perfectly well. Now the aircraft has reached 1,100 feet. So what is important now is to check that everything is correct before you take control. The aircraft, as you can see, is in a perfect position freeze over Los Angeles on final for the runway 24 right. So at this stage you have plenty of time to check that the cockpit has been set correctly by FSI panel. What I will do, just call the cabin to make sure they are seated. Alright, and check your MCDU. Sometimes FSI panel could, for example, select the wrong runway. So at this time, just correct it and put 24 right. This is what we want. It happens sometimes if you don't have the same database in the aircraft and in FSI panel. So if you use the same database, you should not have this issue, but I prefer to tell you right away, make sure everything is set up correctly. You can see FSI panel has set conf 3. We have conf 3 GPWS. And the rest, everything is set. Our transponder is correctly set. Everything is set for you for the approach. So once you're ready to fly, you can take over the control by holding your brakes for 3 seconds. And always take the control before arming the approach. Otherwise, if you're slightly left or right of center line, FSI panel cannot, the aircraft cannot fly because it's static. It's in position freeze, and that can give you all kind of results. So when you're ready, hold your brake for 3 seconds. Let me do it right now. You can see the pedals moving. And now I will get here the information that the aircraft is ready. I can arm the approach, and FSI panel tells you you have control. And right now I have control. I can fly the approach. You can see perfectly established on localizer. Cat 3 singles. We can see the glide slope coming, and we will fly the approach. What I will do now on this approach, I will on purpose go a little bit high, and we will go left of center line. So let's do that now. I'll take autopilot off. I will take the flight director off, and on purpose I will forget to descend, and I will go a little bit to the left, and this is to show you the landing report. Alright, let's try to go 1 dot maximum, so we are still considered as stabilized. 1 dot as well on the, a little bit less than 1 dot, as we have a parallel runway right there on the localizer, and now we go back on the center line where we're supposed to be. So let's go back on the center line, and we keep the aircraft a little bit high, and now I will correct everything, and this is to have a nice landing report that I can show you once we landed. So here we are back fully stabilized, and I will do a floating landing roll, so I will do on purpose a long landing. We will try to land at the, let's say, 800 meters mark, so that's just before the end of the touchdown zone. So let's float. This is something that happened on the new pilot, so let's try to do a floating. We refuse the ground, and I'm floating, and I will go
50,
at the end of the
40,
touchdown zone.
30,
Now I refuse the ground.
20, retard,
I refuse the ground,
retard,
and
5.
just right there. Should be 850 meters. All right, we landed, and I will stop on the center line, and we will see the landing report. All right, let's stop here, so then we can vacate later on the runway to the left. All right, parking brake is set. Let's have a look in the landing report. After landing, this is what you get, a green landing report button. So if you click on it, now you get the landing report. So let me explain what you can see right there. The aircraft type, of course, fly-by-wire A320, then the airport and the runway we flew, then the wind, 170 at 4 knots, so basically 4 knots from the left. The actual temperature, 19 degrees Celsius or 66 degrees Fahrenheit. And precipitation, whether you have rain or snow, that will be shown here. Then we have a touchdown analysis, so you can see, as discussed during the landing roll, I was floating on purpose, and you can see that we were a long landing. So this is 800 and roughly 900 meters, which is the really end of the touchdown zone. So here we have to be careful. This is why FSI panel is telling you long landing. We were on the center line, then the touchdown rate of descent was good, but it's better to have, let's say here, 300 feet per minute and nicely within the touchdown zone than what we have right there. Then I have the indicated airspeed at touchdown, which is 141 knots. Why we use that, you can see on the right side here that we have a threshold IIS of 144 knots, and we have 1000 feet trigger 145 knots, 500 feet trigger we were at 147 knots. So this is to see if your aircraft was stabilized. If, for example, we pass 1000 feet at 165 knots and the threshold at 160 knots, then for sure we were not stabilized at 1000 feet. So then those figures will show in orange or red depending on the severity. Here you can see the landing weight and the date of the flight. Finally, the landing flap, we use flaps 3. We had the auto brake to low, and we disconnected the autopilot at 950 feet. And I crossed the threshold at 67 feet, which is okay. We should cross on an ideal, on a perfect day, 50 feet, we should cross the threshold. Of course, 17 feet, sorry, here in that case is nothing. So this is why it's still green. If you go below 40 feet or above 70 feet, then you will get a warning. Then you can see the maximum localizer deviation, which was 0.8 dots to the left at 1.8 nautical miles. So we can see right there my 1.8 nautical miles, which is here, and I was left as expected, just 1 dot. We said just before 1 dot to stay stabilized, and then the correction took place. The same thing for the glide slope. You can see the glide slope deviation 1.2 dots above at 1.5 nautical miles. So if I go to 1.5 nautical miles, this is where I had the highest deviation, which is more than a dot. So if that would have been a simulator check, I would have failed that exercise. I would need to repeat this exercise, as you should stay within 1 dot. As long as you are within 1 dot, this will be in green if you fly raw data for your training, and you are above 1 dot, below 1 dot, and the same for the localizer, you can consider your check as failed. Then finally, the maximum rate of descent. This is as well to make sure that we are stabilized, and this is all the information you get from your landing report in FSI panel. If you want to save your landing report, use that icon right there, click on it, and now the landing report is saved. How to recover your landing report? Let me show you that. You go to setup, then you go to landing report, and then you click on the last one or whatever you want, and you get a summary of the landing report, and if you click on open landing report, you can see it again, and from that page you can print your landing report if you want to keep them as a record. So that's the landing report of FSI Panel. Now let me show you one last thing on the fly-by-wire A320, and then we will jump on the A330. I will show you the after landing flow. So let's go back in the simulator. All right, here we are in the simulator. So I will release the parking brake and we vacate the runway to the left. All right, this is what I was telling you before. Usually when you vacate the runway and we have to do the after landing flow, there is a lot of actions to be done on the overhead panel, on the central pedestal, and there is a lot of chance that we don't taxi the airplane correctly, and this is unsafe. This is why FSI Panel has this feature, and that will help you a lot. Make sure of two things. First of all, we never start an after landing flow on an active runway. That's the first thing. First, vacate your runway and then start the after landing flow. Second thing, the speed should be below 30 knots ground speed. If not, FSI Panel will not start as well the after landing flow. So here what I will do, I will stop here so that you can see what's happening. I will set the brake, and now I will start the after landing flow. So now we are still in landing configuration with the flaps 3. We have all the lights set, and now what I will do, I will start the after landing flow by retracting my speed brake, the spoilers. So let's go ahead, and now you can see the flaps move up. If we look up, we have the APU which is starting. FSI Panel now is setting the lights. You can see that the landing light have been turned off, taxi lights and runway turn off lights on, the strobe lights has been turned off. If we go here, we can see flaps moving up, and we can see that the predator wind shear has been turned off, as well as the radar. On the transponder, we have the transponder to standby, and we have here auto mode for the ATC. So basically now you can see how FSI Panel can do the job for you using the FCOM procedure. One thing that was mentioned on the forum is, one guy told me, yeah, FSI Panel left the flaps to 1. It was not retracted properly. So this is an FCOM limitation. If the temperature outside is 30 degrees or above, then we should retract the flaps to 1, and FSI Panel is doing exactly that. So if you see, for example, flaps 1 in your after landing flow, like now, this is probably because your outside air temperature is at or above 30 degrees Celsius. All right, as I have an hardware as well, I have the Trustmaster. I always make sure that I follow whatever FSI Panel is doing. Now the flaps are up. I make sure that my Trustmaster flaps are set to up. All right, and that is it. We did an approach on the A320, very easy. And now we will try to do a vector positioning, right-hand vectors to fall right on the A330. So let me start the A330 in Los Angeles, and we see how easy you can do this approach. All right, so let's select now the Airbus A330. Our aircraft, we want the 330 Headwind simulation, and we are going to take the Air Belgium, which is perfect. Then again, I will select Los Angeles as my airport, and we are going to use the same runway. 24 right and daylight. That's all we need. And now we click fly, and I see you when the aircraft is loaded. All right, here's the beautiful A330 Air Belgium. Beautiful job from Headwind. So just click ready to fly, and we are in the cockpit. Here, nothing to be done, just as before, make sure your engines are running. That's one thing. Make sure you have no IRS issue. That should be fine. And now I will show you that you can fly out of the box. We will not change anything in the fuel. We will not change anything in the weight. Of course, if you want, just go ahead and use the tablet as before. Now we are just going to keep the aircraft like this as a default setup, just loaded out of the simulator main window, and we will program our approach in FSI Panel. So let me grab FSI Panel. Okay, so as you can see now, we still have the landing report of our previous landing, and on the bottom left we can see that now we have the A330-900 Neo detected. So that's very important to check. I recommend to restart FSI Panel if you change the aircraft. that makes it easier. So if you change your aircraft, just reload FSI panel. Here we will try like this. It should work. It has been detected, so there is no reason it doesn't work. Alright, so we said we will try right-hand vectors, so I click right-hand vectors. This time you can see that I will be in the configuration vectors, so I'm expecting flaps 1 gear up, and we will do a flaps full landing. Alright, so we are ready to go, so I'll click move aircraft and we see what happened in the simulator. Alright, so you can see my control preparing your aircraft standby, so now FSI panel is basically setting the flaps and just departure destination in the MCDU. So Los Angeles, the flaps are set to 1+F. I have a thrust master, so I will just follow with flaps 1. If you don't have hardware, you don't have to worry about that. Even if you don't do it, it will work, but it will be you will be surprised when you configure the aircraft later on. So just better to follow that. Then when everything is done, FSI panel tells you set your thrust levers to climb detent to start the approach. So let's do that. Climb detent, and now we watch the show. One thing I will do on purpose here, I have the thrust master, so nothing is gonna happen. So FSI panel will tell you that you have probably the parking brake on. So you need to physically turn off your parking brake, which is why the aircraft was not moving. Now the speed is increasing. You can see the speed going to 130 knots, and everything will start again at 130 knots. Here we go, 130 knots. We are in the air. This time our airport is at 1 o'clock. You can see it in front, and FSI panel is now setting everything for us. So let's see that happening. We should have flaps 1. We have the FCU set to go back to 2,400 feet, and the MCDU will be programmed now by FSI panel, so you can see that happening in real time. Arrival, 24 right, insert, and now it will set the performance page with the weight, sorry, not the weight, the weather information. So QNH, temperature, and the wind. Once this is done and we are reaching 2,400 feet, we will get the message that we can take control. So before you get that message right there, do not touch anything, because you can interfere with FSI panel. So once this is done, now you have again all the time to check that everything has been set properly. If you want to change your auto brake to medium, you can go ahead and do it. If you want to change the approach right there or put it direct to somewhere, do it right now before taking the control. Once you are happy with everything, the only thing you have to do again, hold your brake. Sorry, I think I hit the microphone. So hold your brake for 3 seconds and you will take the control. Aircraft ready. Now it's moving, and the only thing I have to do, arm the approach. As you can see, lock and glide slope armed, and we are about to land in Los Angeles for the second time in less than 5 minutes on a different airplane. Everything has been set by FSI panel. So that's how easy you can fly approaches with FSI panel and the fly-by-wire and the Headwind A330. Before I forget, please subscribe to the channel. That will help me doing more and more video for you. And if you have any question or any comment, please write it down in the section down below. I will be very happy to answer your comment. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one. As always, stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.